Okay, so you know that feeling, right? When you check your bank account and something's just not right, like a wrong number, maybe.
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, imagine that, but way worse. Like instead of a wrong number, it just says zero. $0.
Oof, that's rough.
Yeah, and that's exactly what some Bank of America customers went through during a massive outage on October 3rd, 2024. We're going deep on this one, using a Times of India article to break it all down.
Always a good day when we get to talk about bank outages.
Right. So this wasn't just a quick little blip. This outage went on for hours, starting around noon Eastern time. Imagine. You're a Bank of America customer, you try to check your balance, make a purchase, anything.
Yeah.
And nothing. System's totally down.
It's like the digital equivalent of your wallet disappearing into thin air. Except, in this case, it's happening to potentially millions of people at the same time.
And the worst part, this wasn't just some inconvenience. The article talks about people getting declined at the checkout, having no access to their money, complete digital lockdown. Can you imagine the stress?
Absolutely. And the ripple effects are huge. Think about people relying on those funds for important things, bills, groceries, emergencies. Suddenly, they're stuck.
Talk about a nightmare scenario. And get this, even though Bank of America put out a statement saying things were largely resolved relatively early on, that wasn't the reality for a lot of people. The problems dragged on well into the evening.
Oh, I bet that went over well. Nothing like a company telling you everything's fine while you're staring at a blank screen, wondering where your money went.
Right. And that's where things get really interesting. There's this website, Down Detector. They track service disruptions in real time. And they saw a gigantic spike in Bank of America reports right when this whole thing started. Thousands upon thousands of reports, all pointing to the same issue.
It's like a digital smoke signal. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? And in this case, the fire was a whole lot of frustrated bank customers.
Totally. So you've got the bank saying one thing, but people experiencing something completely different. That's a recipe for disaster, right?
100%. And it highlights a crucial point. Clear, consistent communication is paramount during these events. People need to know what's going on, how long it'll last, and what, if anything, they can do.
It's about trust, too. You need to trust that your bank has a handle on the situation, right? But when they're saying everything's fine and your reality is totally different, that trust takes a hit.
No doubt about it. Transparency and honesty go a long way in these situations. And this outage, unfortunately, seems to have been a case study in what not to do.
To make matters worse, the article mentions that even Bank of America's physical branches were impacted.
You're kidding. So not only is the digital side down, but you can't even walk into a branch for help.
Exactly. Imagine being stressed out about the online outage, needing to do something important at the bank, and you can't even get through the door.
Talk about adding insult to injury. It really shows just how reliant we've become on these systems functioning properly. And when they don't, the consequences are massive.
Okay, so big picture time. How common are these sorts of outages? Are we talking about a once-in-a-blue-moon event? Or is this something we should be prepared to see more of as we depend more and more on digital banking?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Now, these major system-wide outages, they're not an everyday occurrence, thankfully, but they're not unheard of either. We've seen similar disruptions with other big banks and financial institutions over the past few years.
So it's not really a matter of if it'll happen again, but when. That's a bit unsettling, to say the least.
It really makes you think, like what can we actually do when these systems decide to take a break?
Right. What do you do when you're basically locked out of your own money, asking for a friend?
Well, first off, don't panic. Easier said than done, I know. But seriously, having a game plan for these kinds of situations can be a lifesaver.
Okay, so what's a good game plan look like when it comes to banking chaos?
Think of it like this. It's always smart to have a little bit of cash stashed away somewhere safe, just for emergencies, in case the ATMs decide to go on strike too.
Makes sense. Can't go wrong with a little cash backup.
Exactly. And this is a good reminder to think about those alternative payment methods too, those mobile payment apps or even good old-fashioned checks. They might seem kind of outdated,
But they could save the day when the digital world goes haywire. I get it.
absolutely. And this whole outage, it really throws a spotlight on something super important for these financial institutions they have to make their systems resilient. And not just that, they need to be communicating clearly with their customers. People need to know their hard-earned cash is safe, that they can actually access it when they need to, and that their bank has their back, especially when things hit the fan.
So it's a two-way street. Banks need to step up their game when it comes to trust and communication.
You got it. Trust is earned, especially in the digital age.
Speaking of trust, the article mentioned something about Bank of America's response to this whole debacle. Did they say anything at all?
They did, yeah. Early on, they put out a statement acknowledging the outage and said they were, working on it, even claimed that the problem was largely resolved.
But we already know that wasn't exactly true for everyone, right?
Not even close. And this just loops back to that whole communication breakdown thing. In these situations, being upfront and honest with customers is critical. They need accurate information and they need it fast so they can make informed decisions.
For sure. When you feel like you're being kept in the dark, it just breeds mistrust and makes a stressful situation 100 times worse.
Exactly. Transparency is key. Now, the article didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of what actually caused this massive outage. I mean, what could bring a banking giant like Bank of America to its knees?
Right. Was it a rogue squirrel chewing on a power cable? Aliens? A disgruntled intern?
Who knows? But seriously, it could be a whole bunch of things. A software glitch, maybe, or a hardware failure. Those servers are working overtime these days. And then there's always that looming threat of a cyber attack.
True. You can never rule those out. It's a brave new world of digital threats out there.
No kidding. And regardless of the cause, it just goes to show you how vulnerable even the most sophisticated systems can be. We put so much faith in these digital tools, but they're not infallible.
Definitely a good reality check. Even in the age of super advanced technology, things can and do go wrong. And sometimes those things involve our money. Not ideal.
Yeah, it's a little unnerving when you really think about it, right? All our digital eggs in one basket, and that basket might have a hole in it.
It's definitely a wake-up call. And you know what got me thinking? We're always told to have a plan for emergencies, like what to do if there's a natural disaster or something.
Right, have your go bag ready, know your escape routes, all that.
Exactly. But how many of us have a plan for when our digital banking goes down? It's like we just assume it'll always be there. Yeah, it's easy to forget about those things when everything's running smoothly. We're so used to instant access, we don't always think about what happens when that access disappears.
Exactly. And it's not about being all doom and gloom, but a little preparation goes a long way.
Huh?
Right? Like having some cash on hand, knowing how to use those other payment methods, keeping your bank's contact info somewhere accessible, not just buried in your phone.
Like having that spare tire in your trunk. You hope you never need it, but you're awfully glad you have it when you do.
Perfectly put. It's all about peace of mind, right? And for those Bank of America customers caught in the thick of it, well, it's a harsh reminder that even the systems we rely on the most, they're not perfect. They can fail.
Definitely an eye-opening deep dive, for sure. It's so easy to take things like online banking for granted until something like this happens.
Absolutely. And I think it really underscores the responsibility we all have, both the institutions and us as individuals, to make sure our digital lives are as secure as possible. Because this reliance on technology isn't going away anytime soon.
Couldn't agree more. Well said. So as we wrap things up here, I think the big takeaway is this. Don't wait for a crisis to happen before you start thinking about your digital security and your financial well-being. So next time you're checking your account balance, maybe take a second to appreciate the technology that makes it all possible, and then, maybe jot down some backup plans just in case. Stay informed out there, folks, and until next time, keep those deep thoughts flowing.